Hey, all, Scott here. Just a really quick announcement for y'all. You're probably wondering, hey, where's part 10 of 11/22/63? That's not what this is. This is a Hulu show that came out 7 years ago. What's going on? Well, as many of you know, we are heading to Bangor this weekend for Kingslingers Live. We're very excited. In fact, if you're listening to this right when it comes out, I am on the plane as we speak, heading up to Maine. We were really hoping we'd be able to record an episode and release it this week. But once more, as is common with us, we bit off a little more than we could chew and just flat out did not have time to prepare for the episode, to record the episode, to edit the episode, to do everything that it takes to get this show out every week. We just didn't have time, unfortunately, this week. We still wanted to give you something, so here's an episode of our Patreon exclusive podcast, Castle Talk, where we talk about Hulu's Castle Rock. We're covering the first 2 episodes of season 1 in this episode. The first 2 episodes of season 2 just released for our patrons, so if you're a patron, you should go check that out. But we really liked this show, and I think it's a pretty good conversation about these first 2 episodes of the show. I hope you guys enjoy it, and if you're like me and you're on your way to Bangor, well, geez, I can't wait to meet you. We are so excited, and we're so thankful that everything has come together like this. Hopefully you guys will be hearing the live episode hopefully next week. We'll see how things go. It depends on the quality of the audio and how much work I have to do to clean it up. But hopefully you'll hear it next week, and we'll be back to 11/22/63 the week after that. That'll be the episode that comes out on the 27th of June. We'll be back with John F. Kennedy and figure out, what happens to him. So hope you guys enjoy this. Can't wait to meet a bunch of y'all in Maine this weekend, and long days and pleasant nights. Enjoy the show. Days, pleasant nights, and welcome to Castle Talk, our newest bonus podcast where we take a look at the Hulu original series Castle Rock, an episode at a time. My name is Scott Daly, and I'm joined, as always, by the strange kid locked up in a water tank at the bottom of my prison. It's Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
Scott Daly. Oh, you're here already. Hey, I was looking for you.
You didn't get out and walk around yesterday, did you?
Nah.
Kill any Nazis with cancer lately?
I mean, a little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
Folks, we're very excited today. It's January, it's a new month, it's a new year, and we are ready to start this new show. Today, we're going to be talking about the first 2 episodes of Castle Rock. The first episode, Severance, and the second episode, Habeas Corpus, which, as we all know, means show me the corpse.
Yep. Have
That's
corpus.
Close, right? Mm-hmm. I'm excited about this, Matt. I think this is going to be a really fun project we're doing here.
Yeah, I am even more excited about it now that we've actually watched these 2 episodes.
Yeah, it's an interesting little animal, Castle Rock. And before we get into the episodes themselves, I thought we could talk about the show overall a little bit here.
Yeah,
because it's very different. I know you have watched It Chapter 1 as part of our episodes on that series, and I told you when we covered that movie that it made just so much money, right? It made like hundreds of millions of dollars, was like the highest grossing rated R film of all time at one point. The thing that happened after that, predictably, was that everyone in Hollywood decided that the reason it was successful, or to capitalize on its success, was Stephen King himself, and started greenlighting every project. There was a period there where like every other day we were getting announcements of some new thing, and like half those projects have either failed or burned out or never come to fruition. But we did get a lot of things in this post-It time period. And one of those things was this interesting little anthology series called Castle Rock, which is not an adaptation of any specific Stephen King story, but rather kind of an anthology series. And by that, I mean there are 2 seasons and each tells a different story. but an anthology series that takes place in King's fictional town of Castle Rock and tells a new story that obviously is referencing characters and other stories in King's universe that exist within this thing. It's just this really fascinating little project that I watched when it came out. I enjoyed it, and I've always wanted to spend some more time on it, and this seemed like the perfect way to.
That's great. And it's funny. I guess I came into this kind of ambivalent because I was like, well, if it was a show that they canceled, it can't have been that good. And man, the first two episodes really exceeded my expectations, which admittedly were low. But let me rephrase that. Like I thought it was very engaging. It really hooked me. In fact, to the point where I was like, oh man, now I kind of regret that we have locked ourselves into this thing where we're spacing out our coverage so much because I mean, I guess I can watch the next two episodes as soon as we finish this conversation, technically. But the point is like
memory.
yeah, that wouldn't necessarily be smart. The point is, I enjoyed it enough that I wanted to just keep binging it after I started.
I think it does a lot of things very, very well. I should point out that this is executive produced by J.J. Abrams under his Bad Robot production company. So it lives in the world of mystery boxes a little bit. Obviously, there are some big questions that the first two episodes of this show pose to the characters and to us, the audience, and they are interesting ways of like kind of pulling us along. Speaking of the cancellation, I just wanted to point out that the first season came out in 2018, the second season came out in 2019, and then the show was not officially canceled until November of 2020, which is in the post-pandemic world. I don't think the show was ever doing like huge, crazy good numbers, but the pandemic certainly was a great excuse for a lot of these streaming companies to just get rid of everything. So like, you wonder in a world where COVID-19 never happened, like would this show have gotten a third season? Maybe not, but we can blame the pandemic on it. So I'm going to.
Sounds good.
I just wanted to speak a little bit about the creators of the show because I think it's interesting that the show is created by two men named Dustin Thomason and Sam Shaw. They are TV writers and showrunners. They haven't done a whole lot though before this. I think this is a perfect example of just how crazy everyone went for Stephen King stuff post It, where they just gave these two guys who wrote a few episodes of the show Lie to Me. I don't know if you remember that network show. It had Tim Roth as his main character, and it was all about. Oh, you do know it?
Yeah.
It's all about like detecting the truth from like I feel like there was a time period in the 2000s where someone read an article about how you can see if people are being honest by their body language, and that became like really popular in pop culture, and they made a bunch of TV shows about it, and this was one of them.
Yeah, I believe the idea was that like you could be trained to read micro expressions, and then no one could possibly lie to you ever again.
Yeah,
which is not true. But a cool idea though.
Yeah,
for sure.
So Dustin Thomason wrote 4 episodes of that show. He also wrote for a show called Manhattan, which Sam Shaw, the other writer, was the creator of. That is it's a nice little family drama about a town called Los Alamos during the Manhattan Project.
Okay, cool.
I never watched it. It ran for 2 seasons. Dustin Thomason wrote 3 episodes. Sam Shaw wrote a few, and he was also considered the creator. I think this is ironic. I read this today because I'm like halfway through my Oppenheimer watch for our episode this week, and I was like, oh, look at that.
Yeah, I was actually not sure that you weren't making some kind of tongue-in-cheek joke about like he was in Oppenheimer or something, but no, it was actually a TV show. That's crazy.
There was actually a TV show called Manhattan that was about the Manhattan Project in Los Alamos, but also it was a network TV show about people and relationships.
God, that just really sounds like a sort of like gag pretend show that would be on the TV inside of a sitcom as a way of making fun of the sorts of ridiculous ideas that get made into TV shows.
Absolutely. Matt, this show is just stocked with A-list, well, okay, not A-list TV talent, I think we should
Yeah.
say. There's a lot of actors in this thing, and there are a lot of great actors. We have Andre Holland, who plays our main character, Henry Deaver. Melanie Linsky, I don't know if you know her. She's a TV actress that I've just been in love with for a very, very long time. She
Yeah.
plays Molly Strand.
Yeah, I mean, I know her face. I didn't know her name. That was kind of the level
Mm-hmm.
at which I knew her. I was like, oh yeah, her. Yeah.
She, I think most recently was on The Last of Us for a couple episodes. Really, really love her.
Mhm.
Bill Skarsgård, of course, Pennywise, is back as not Pennywise this time. He's back as the kid. That's all we know about him so far. He's our big puzzle box at the center of this whole thing is Skarsgård playing another weirdo.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he is Pennywise.
Could be. Sissy Spacek, Carrie White is back to Stephen King playing Henry Deaver's mother. We also have Scott Glenn playing often referenced Alan Pangborn, who we've seen in many, many, many Castle Rock things. This time he's played by Scott Glenn, who I also love. Great actor.
Yeah.
We have Terry O'Quinn, John Locke himself.
John Locke. I'm going to be referring to him as John Locke for this entire conversation, just FYI.
Fair. He plays the former warden of Shawshank Prison, Dale Lacey, who exits the show very early on. But I think episode 2 kind of gestures to that he's going to be a presence in the show going forward, right? Like we see flashbacks, we have a voiceover by him. So Terry O'Quinn doesn't sign on to do a show for 5 minutes and be done. So he's going to be sticking around in a different kind of capacity.
Yeah, I mean, it did seem like we were going to be jumping back and forth in time enough that we would be seeing the the kid version, the old days version of things happening.
Yeah. And then last, certainly not least, we have Noel Fisher, who plays Dennis, the Shawshank security guard that happens to stumble upon the kid. I know you don't know him, probably, Matt, but he was an actor in a long-running Showtime series, Shameless, that I really, really enjoyed. It was fun seeing him get work.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, so that's just our main players, right? There's tons of other characters. I haven't talked about Jackie Torrance yet. We'll get there.
Yep. There's just all kind. I mean, yeah. There's so many little things like that I feel like we're definitely going to drop a couple of them.
Yeah.
But they were surprisingly delightful to me. I mean, even just seeing Pangborn, like the first thing, because my history with Alan Pangborn, first Stephen King novel I ever read is a Castle Rock novel with Alan Pangborn as the brave sheriff, which kind of was actually managed to hit me as a twist, where it's like, wait a minute, we're doing something complicated, we're doing something maybe Alan Pangborn isn't all on the level. This is disturbing and upsetting to me. I'm invested already.
No, yeah, it's great. That's one of the things I do want to talk about as we go through this whole show is like, and I know it's difficult for us to do this, even for you to do this, because you know this place and these characters and get a lot of these references, perhaps not all of them, but a lot of them. But I am curious, like, to think about how the show works from the perspective of a person who's never watched any of this stuff or read any of this stuff, because I of course don't have that. I did watch this with my wife, at least the first season. I think actually we watched both seasons, and I think she liked the second one better. But she of course got none of the references, and I think I will say, like, my bold claim here at the beginning is I do think this thing works as just a character story without any of the references. The references make it fun for people like us, but I do think it functions without any of that.
I think you're right. I mean, for one thing, the fact that there's a Torrance, it's like, well, that doesn't mean anything other than being kind of cute. So it didn't really affect much. And you
don't have to know Alan Pangborn exists in a King novel,
right? Like
that doesn't matter.
And to be fair, there may be even things that I missed that you got because I haven't read those books. I don't know. I mean, a lot the stuff that felt the most sort of like heavily referential, generally in a good way, was the like John Locke giving the voiceover of like, this town has something dark at its heart. Towns are evil places, and no one should live in towns. And I was like, yeah, that's in every King book. And like, as for how that would work on a person who had not read King's work, I think it would work pretty much correctly, because it's like, they're, I don't know, 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 they're, I don't know I don't know, they're being clear and concise, and I mean the episodes are well paced. That really helps.
Yeah,
The mystery box construction, for all I have my problems with it in many cases, um, and knowing JJ's involved, I do have this lingering fear in the back of my mind that we're getting like the reveal is going to be unsatisfying. But the thing about the show so far is I'm like, I kind of don't care if the reveal is unsatisfying because I'm enjoying the roller coaster so much.
sure. Yeah.
And that can always change. Like, I'm not guaranteed to keep loving the show, but I genuinely thought these first two episodes were great, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the biggest advantage of the mystery box style is that you can start so strongly because you're just pummeling the viewer with mysteries and questions, and you're like, oh yeah, oh why did he do that? Why did he say that? Why did he burn the note? What is going on here? And
Yeah.
and you don't have any answers, and the show doesn't have to give you any of those answers yet. Like you are still a young, fresh viewer. And so you're not demanding answers yet. It's just how do you pull off the answer demand is the big question.
Exactly.
And I we'll see definitely. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you that the references are fun. There's tons of references to other King books in this, like a lot. But I agree with you. The thing that I like most about the show is that it really feels like it understands the core, like from a thematic perspective of what a Stephen King story is. And so they're not just adapting a story. They're not just throwing 1,000 references at you. They are understanding what a King story is, and they're doing that, and it has all the hallmarks, and it gets them, and that makes it fun for sure.
I agree. I mean, that's what's kind of fun, I think, like legitimately, is Stephen King does not really do mystery boxes. And so it's all of this stuff that feels very familiar, but with this sort of fun spin that feels very fresh, which is that it is all wrapped up in this mystery box fashion, where like that's just very compelling. I'm not saying that like, oh, King should start writing his stories this way. It's just like, well, it's very fun to see the elements that we know and love that he has sort of mastered, and then take them and refract them through this very different storytelling sensibility.
Yeah,
that clearly does understand what's good about the way he does things, but it's going to make it just hook into you that much more.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking about is like how chapter 2 of the King version of this would like show you exactly where Henry Deaver was during his 11 days missing. It would just do that right away.
Yeah. I think you're right, because like part of the thing that pulls you along in the mystery box is that feeling of like, okay, like I have all of these questions. I could probably even like list the questions out, right? Like I want to know what happened to the kid when he was missing. I want to know how his father died. I want to know more details about why everyone thinks he did it, or like what his life was like as a kid. Obviously, I want to understand what's going on with the kid in the cell, and why the warden put him in the cell, and what role Pangborn has in all of this, because Pangborn seems to know about it and actually be in on it, which was like I said, just like a genuinely shocking twist.
Yeah.
I was like, Pangborn, no. And I mean that's like what seven different points maybe, and that's
then you have Melanie Linsky's character who's like creepily obsessed with Henry for some reason,
and seems to have the Shining.
Has the Shining, and it is using OxyContin to dull it, I guess. Is that what she was buying? Was she buying Oxy? I didn't actually.
I thought somebody said Percocet at one point, but I mean, I don't know what she was buying. The point is some kind of opioid, which plays into the present moment, and also it seems it's funny. We talked a lot about the idea that Jack Torrance was like medicating his sort of psychic oversensitivity with alcohol, even though that book really never says that outright. And it is, I don't think it's a terrible choice actually to just have the character be like, I'm medicating my psychic powers with opioids. It's like it's so much more straightforward and clear in a TV context when you don't have all of the internality to play with. And you just kind of buy it as like, oh, okay, yeah, makes sense for a character to do. Sure.
Yeah. You're so right. it works, and it allows, like, we're kind of jumping into the next part already, but I really am fascinated by the Molly character, because she does play into a lot of the larger questions and mysteries of the show for sure, but she also has a lot of just like the mundane drama stuff that I really like too, where like Molly is this character who, as you said, has this power, I guess. We have no reason to deny or disbelieve her because we're in a Stephen King story, right? But no one else believes her, and she exists in this town that is dying. And like the big mundane thing we see her is she's a real estate agent. She's a realtor, and she wants to revitalize Castle Rock. She wants to rebuild it. Like the one scene we get in the second episode with her sister is that she's taken out a home equity line of credit on her home for $40,000 to lease a place that she hopes to turn into living for people in this dead town that we learn in these two episodes has unincorporated. That like they voted to unincorporate. Castle Rock in this story is not in a good place. It is falling apart, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, I wonder what city this is filmed in, because they keep doing these, sweeping overhead drone or possibly helicopter shots that show like just the most rundown, dilapidated town with like buildings that are just collapsed in on themselves and just left that way. Mm-hmm. And you're just like, yeah, this is depressing. I wonder where this is actually.
It's a town called Orange, Massachusetts, is where they did most of their filming. Yeah, I looked that up too because I was curious. Yeah, I guess we should say, Matt, we should have said this at the beginning, but you are a resident of Castle Rock.
I am. I've been a resident of Castle Rock for the entire time that we've been doing this podcast together.
Before you even knew that was significant.
Yeah.
You are a resident of Castle Rock. And furthermore, the P.O. box for our company has a Castle Rock address.
That's right. So
Doof Media, Castle Rock residents.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not Castle Rock, Maine, but details.
Yeah, not Castle Rock, Maine, but that's in this level of the tower, Castle Rock is located in Colorado.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
That's an entirely different climate and type of place, but sure, we'll go for it.
Yeah, I mean, you can have just as many weird demons and I don't think there's like a prison anywhere nearby. Oh, actually, I think there's a jail. Does a jail count as a prison?
No.
Oh.
Is it a non-for-profit prison? That's or a private prison. That's one thing I didn't. I don't remember the other King stories like Shawshank and things like. I didn't realize that Shawshank was a private prison. I mean, maybe it didn't used to be and became a private prison recently, and that allows the show to comment on the horrible awfulness that is for-profit prison complexes.
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't remember any of that being a thing. In fact, I honestly feel like the idea of a for-profit prison is probably one of those things that people are. It's only in the movie or it's only in the show because it's the thing people are talking about now.
Yeah, and because it's absurd. Because it's an absurd thing that exists.
Like I feel like it's entirely possible that maybe King didn't know about private prisons when he wrote Shawshank, but if he had, he totally would have made Shawshank Prison a private prison.
Yeah, I agree. I do like, I don't know, I'm the type of person that I like that kind of social commentary mixed in my stuff. Like this is like the central mystery of who the kid is and what we do with him, we being the warden and the staff of the prison. But mixed in with that is also a commentary of how corrupt and terrible these prison complexes are. I think that's fun. I like that.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, before we actually get into the episodes proper, I have to give you a pop quiz, though. This is very important. It's a pop quiz. And by pop quiz, I mean I put it in the script. So if you had read the script before, you knew that this was coming.
Did not. So
which stories of Stephen King's take place in Castle Rock, Maine? There's some pretty big hints in these two episodes if you were paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to miss some, but I mean, obviously Needful Things.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're counting anything that involves Shawshank, if we're counting Shawshank Prison as being part of Castle Rock, which I guess we should.
I don't actually know how. Like the show makes it seem like
it's right there.
Shawshank is in Castle Rock.
Yeah,
I feel like it was nearby, but I don't think it was like as close as the show depicts it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel pretty sure that Shawshank was not. it may have been mentioned in Needful Things because I did read that like 20 years ago,
Hmm.
but it wasn't important, right?
Sure.
I mean, okay, fine, whatever. I'll say Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption,
Sure.
just to cover my bases. Let's see what else we was so we got a Torrance. Does that imply that didn't the Torrances? Damn, I don't remember. Okay, let's just
The bar, the Mellow Tiger, as I think mentioned once in The Shining,
okay.
which is the bar they go to in episode 2 of the show. So,
Okay.
I guess so. The Shining did not exist in Castle Rock.
Okay. Well, we'll just pretend that that they lived there briefly.
Okay.
Now I thought I'd do better at this. I definitely had those two on the tip of my tongue,
Mm-hmm.
and now I'm struggling.
So what you had to have done is had to have been paying very close attention to when Henry Deaver was rifling through newspaper clippings from the Terry O'Quinn's character John Locke, for the files he kept in his house, because every one of those newspaper clippings was a Stephen King book.
Okay, well then I'm gonna miss a ton.
Yeah. So there was Rabid Dog. Is
Cujo.
killed because Cujo exists. They mentioned the Strangler a couple times, which is, I know you haven't read The Dead Zone, but we watched the movie, and that took place in Castle Rock.
Okay.
The book The Dark Half, which you never read, took place in Castle Rock. They mentioned the body found on the train tracks.
Okay.
So that is for the body.
Yep.
Or Stand By Me.
Yep.
And of course, you got Needful Things. Those are the big ones. They have several other like short stories within his collection that take place in Castle Rock. Like I think Sundog is one of them. We don't have to go through all of them. There's a lot, but the big ones they're drawing attention to. I don't know if you saw, there was one newspaper clipping that was for Needful Things that was like, mysterious shop owner disappears in shop catching on fire or something like that.
I wish I had, because I was like primed to try to notice something about Needful Things. Because if you take it seriously that this is literally Alan Payne-born, then he's seen some pretty wild shit in his life.
Right. Yeah. For sure. And then they do mention Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption very briefly. I think when they're touring the warden's office, when the new warden has come in, they're touring the office, they mention the bullet hole in the wall from in Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption, the former warden shooting himself. So that's there's more, but we don't have to go through each of them in a lot of detail. Suffice it to say, like, they are throwing that stuff at us, but I like the way they're doing it. Like I said, newspaper clippings where you didn't even notice them, and it didn't hurt your enjoyment of this at all, because it doesn't matter, because all it's really doing for us constant readers is reestablishing the mood of what this place is, and that these things happen in this place. These awful things happen over and over and over again in this place.
And it does successfully establish that feeling of like, this is a damned place.
Yeah.
And furthermore, the idea that like, if you've got these men of the law who see themselves as, trying to protect people, and they think they've found some supernatural cause for why the town is this nightmare hellhole that it is, then they might be willing to do something really extreme. And so, even in these first two episodes, you're jerked around a lot emotionally, because you're like, you don't really know how to feel about John Locke, because you're like, okay, he's a prison warden. That's like, not great, but he sees himself as like serving the good, whatever that's worth. But now he realized that he has this kid that he keeps in a cage, and has for years and years apparently. And that's a bad look, as the kids say. But it's like, well, maybe there's like a really good supernatural reason for it, and we just don't know. And it's going to turn out like, I mean, it feels like we're being set up for a situation where like our protagonist character, who we haven't actually talked about that much, because he's sort of the investigator archetype, which means he doesn't have much of a character on his own, but he I wonder if we're being set up for him to like valiantly try to exonerate this kid, and then it turns out the kid is actually Satan, and it's like you weren't supposed to do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, the fun part of the show is that it exists in this 1-2 punch of what did you do to this poor innocent child, and also, okay, but this is a Stephen King story. This could actually just be Satan. And we do
Right.
see in episode 2 that this neo-Nazi they put him in a cell with, like his body is riddled with cancer after like a day. So there's something supernatural going on here,
Yeah.
possibly.
Yeah. Well, and we saw the scene where the other prison guard who is also like a
Dennis, yeah.
pretty compelling character, good actor. I like that. Saw him appear to leave his cell and like butcher all these people, but it didn't actually happen,
Mm-hmm.
which seemed obviously supernatural to me.
Yeah. All right, I think that let's get into the episodes then. We've kind of already done that, but let's do it officially and formally. So, our first episode is titled Severance, not the Apple TV show. Matt, don't get confused.
No.
This episode was written by Sam Shaw and Dustin Thomason. Those are the two showrunners we talked about before. It was directed by a director named Michael Uppendale, who is, I don't know if you know about like how TV directing works, Matt, but like it's actually very rare in TV that like one person directs all episodes and that like the showrunner is the writer / director. Like that kind of auteur theory movie stuff doesn't happen in TV very much at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have the guy who directed this episode and the second episode as well as a guy named Michael Uppendale, which if you just look at his IMDb, like he's just a journeyman television director. He just goes in to all these different shows and just directs a bunch of episodes. Like I think his most notable stuff is he directed a fair amount of episodes of Mad Men. He directed some episodes of Glee, some episodes of that show Legion. I don't know if you remember that show. Some episodes of the American Horror Story anthology series. He's just kind of all over the place. And I think these are two well-directed episodes. I think they do really good job setting the mood. I love that you talked about the kind of the flyover stuff with Castle Rock. We actually get like two separate introductions to Castle Rock, one in this episode and then another in the second episode. That one has some John Locke voiceover. This one's just some flyover stuff. I think they're good looking episodes for sure.
Yeah. I that was one element of the show that actually surprised me in a good way. Is I was like, this is slick. Like this looks really good.
Yeah.
It honestly reminds me of like Midnight Mass, where it's just this like assured, cinematography and direction. And I mean, you got all these great actors, so it's almost a given that the performances are going to be good. But they're like really good, especially from our old hand actors. Like you said, good direction. Just everything came together like better than you expect from something that kind of sounds like what you were saying at the beginning of this conversation. It's like, hey, let's just jump on this and try to capitalize on Stephen King's fame. It's like, no, they actually did a good job.
Yeah, and I think the story of those kind of things, in my mind at least, it's the studios are jumping on and capitalizing, but normally these are projects that these people have probably been trying to work on and push for a long time, and it's just they don't get greenlit until stuff like this happens. Like I didn't look up the history of Dustin Thomason and Sam Shaw with this story, how long they were working on it and trying to sell it, but it feels like a type of thing that they were probably trying to sell it for a while, and it wasn't until after it that someone goes, yeah, let's do that. Let's go.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think you're right. There's definitely an ecosystem of writers who are constantly creating like really good stuff, and who knows?
Yeah.
That's why I never totally discount anything, no matter how dumb the idea sounds.
Definitely. Like there's I don't know if you know about this yet, but there's an anthology series about the city of Derry coming.
Did not.
I believe that's coming to HBO. I'm not sure. I can't keep track of what streaming things are happening where. But I think it's coming later this year. It's called Welcome to Derry. And it's about I think the 1960s in Derry. And so maybe we'll be having a similar conversation like we're having about Castle Rock to that. But yeah, that was a long gestating one as well.
That's cool.
Yeah. All right, but let's get into Severance. I wanted to start with Henry Deaver. We talked about him a little bit here, but this is you said something that I'm going to kind of push back on you about, that like because he's the method of solving the mystery, he doesn't have much of a character himself. And to a certain extent, I agree with you, like at least from a mystery perspective. But I really like this guy, and I'm really fascinated by like his life choices and what he's gone through. So the setup for this is that, the show starts with Alan Pangborn just like wandering through the snow, poking piles of snow, which is just this really evocative setup, right? You're like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? And like he like pokes one and feels some resistance, unburies the snow, and it's a deer, and he's like immediately disappointed. And you're like, what is happening here? And we learn that actually he's searching for the missing Henry Deaver, who just disappeared one day. We also learn his father went out looking for him, his adopted father, and they found him 3 days later, dying with a broken back. After that, Henry showed up like after 11 days missing, even though it was like negative 20 degrees outside. Henry was completely fine, had no memory of what happened to him. And the town blames him for his father's death and basically completely ostracizes him because his father was the town reverend, and everyone hates him for this. And so Henry leaves town. We find him in the show living in Texas. He's working as a death row defense attorney, a bad one, by the way, because he literally says all my clients are dead. So if you're a defense attorney for people on death row and they're all dead, you're not doing a great job.
For a second, I was like, oh, is he like intentionally doing a bad job? Like, because I was like, that would be kind of an interesting twist. And I pretty quickly decided that wasn't what we were going to do with this character. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but he's kind of thrust into the story when the kid shows up and says his name for some reason. We don't know why. We learn at the end of this very first episode that the reason he says his name is because Terry O'Quinn, John Locke, told him to, which we don't know the why of that either. But it causes him to come back to Castle Rock for presumably the first time in a long time. His mother is obviously suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's or something like that, and shacking up with the elderly Pangborn. This all it's really great stuff. Like I don't know. I think you said like one of your big questions is why does the town seem to hate him so much for this thing? And I think we kind of learn a little bit in these 2 episodes that one, it possibly is racially motivated, that they don't like him because he's black, that this kid was a troublemaker when he was adopted by Deavers, so they never really liked him, and that like his father was like beloved by the town, and the kid, they just don't believe the kid when he says, they assume he was just off making trouble and got his father killed or did the pushing himself possibly. And so the town has basically collectively decided this, which is a really interesting angle on it all. And is it see, the problem with doing 2 episodes at a time is I mix them up.
Yeah.
Is it the second episode where they go to Molly as a kid and ask her if she's seen Henry?
I feel like it must be the second episode.
Yeah. And the one thing that I love about that scene so much is that like you can already see they're building the narrative of that he's responsible for this.
Yeah.
Like they haven't even found him yet. They don't even know what's going on, but like already in the town's mind, it's his fault that he's off making trouble somewhere.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I'm kind of reflecting on why I said that, because while everything you just said is rationally true, I still feel this sense of distance maybe, and I think it's basically just like mystery box storytelling does sort of impose a kind of distance, because ultimately it relies on you not knowing stuff about the character that the character knows, which again is that thing that Stephen King sort of tries to never let happen. Yeah. And also and then on top of that, you're very often just sort of watching the character wander around and discover things in a in a sort of passive way. And I'm neither of these are really criticisms, because I don't think this show falls into the traps that shows that stories of that nature often do. I think that he, especially like the way he's introduced is super compelling. Like he's trying to get this woman off death row. It's quite unclear whether she actually maybe just did do the thing that she's on death row for. She totally may have actually. interestingly, they like failed to kill her. I thought it was there was a lot of really interesting stuff there that I think hooked me and gave me a sense of confidence that like the storytellers know what they're doing, because even in just this basic scene with this death row woman that we're never going to see again, I felt just so much, pathos and complexity in both characters.
Oh yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
so,
No,
like, yeah,
that poor woman.
yeah,
There's there's so absurd. Like we talked about this on the Green Mile episode, that I think and you as well are like completely anti capital punishment. And
mhm,
there's just something that seems so absurd about this woman that killed her husband 30 years ago, and is an old lady, and now we're gonna like fucking kill her.
yeah,
Yeah, that'll show her for this crime she committed in the 90s.
uh-huh,
Yeah, I think the subtext is there that she did it, but her husband was abusive and
yeah,
terrible, and she killed him, which is I think not a direct, but I think an indirect reference to another King story,
uh-huh,
several King stories actually.
right,
So
yeah,
and then yeah, we have this whole moment with her where he fails her kind of, and she lets him off the hook for it, kind of like she
yeah.
says, actually no, this is what I want, I want this to be over.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it felt like we were setting up some thematic stuff there, where she says like, I wonder when you die, like, are you just gone? Did they just
Mm-hmm.
like, if you do go on, do they just erase the tape, and it's just, is everything left? Is nothing left of you? And he's like, oh, is that what you're afraid of? And then she says that's what I hope for. And I was like,
Yeah,
that's like, man, like, wherever this story is going, I want to find out what we're saying about this idea.
yeah.
Because we got this element, we got so many elements, right? But we've got this element of death row, capital punishment,
Mm-hmm.
death, just as a concept. And I don't, that's the thing, I don't know how the pieces fit together yet. That's always the
Yeah,
that's always the fear with J.J. Abrams storytelling, is that there's always a chance that it just never does. And you're just like
sure.
left with this pile of themes that they're just like, oh,
I
well,
will say, like, to try to assuage you a little bit here without
uh-huh,
spoiling anything. Yes, J.J. Abrams, executive producer. Yes, this is a bad robot production. Yes, yes, yes. He had no part in any of the writing of any of
okay,
this.
okay.
None. So neither did Lindelof, by the way. Don't worry about that.
Okay, thank God.
But
Okay,
yeah, no,
yeah,
I think that's a fair concern. I think we've been hurt many times by this structure of storytelling. But I think the beginning episodes are the most fun ones, and I agree with you. Like, listening to that conversation is like, oh, we're saying something here, we're doing
yeah,
something here, especially where you can, like, when you learn that Henry's father was a preacher,
yeah,
and
yeah.
so does Henry still believe in God and this stuff? We know his father did, but does Henry? And we don't know about that relationship very much. The other thing we don't know, I think the show is very clever about this, is we kind of like Henry, and I love what you said about like feeling removed from him a little bit, at a distance a little bit, because the show
Mhm.
hasn't been like 100% clear if Henry does remember what happened to him in those 11 days or not. Like,
Yeah,
he's not saying anything to anyone if he does, and so, like, we don't know if he's lying or if he's telling the truth, and that does remove the distance a little bit here, and you begin to wonder, like, is his choice of becoming a death row uh defense attorney, like, trying to make up for the death he feels responsible for, which is
hmm,
that of his his father. So if I can save these guilty or not guilty people from death, maybe that'll make up for what I did to my dad, or what people think I did to my dad, or what we don't know. We don't
yeah,
know, but
right. There's secrets. He has this little statue in his hand when he came back that he's
yeah.
kept hidden, and it's like, well,
Hmm.
why would he keep it hidden unless it mattered?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I just caught this. Maybe this is meaningless, but when they went to question the girl, there's the brief scene that you mentioned where they question her as this in the second episode, I guess
Hmm.
we've decided, and they're like, his father is missing, and she immediately says adoptive father. And it's interesting
Yeah.
because it's her saying it, it's not him saying it. and it's reflexive, and it's almost like she knows something about that relationship, and whatever she knows is not good, because why else say that, you know?
Yeah. It's an attempt to separate them from
Yeah.
each other, like
Yeah.
in her mind, like yes, not really her dad. I need to make sure that's clear. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was the little hints like that make you think like, well, yeah, maybe he does remember, maybe he did kill his dad, but maybe the situation is not what people assume, you know. Lots of good, like, subtle hints laying, and uh yeah, just lots of room for fun twists and reveals and stuff. Just
For
good
sure.
stuff.
For sure. And the other half of this whole thing is John Locke and our introduction with him at the beginning of the show, which is such a compelling one. I loved this. So basically the structure of the show is we start with Sheriff Pangborn searching for Henry. He finds Henry, rushes home, and then we cut to Terry O'Quinn getting ready for his final day of work as warden of Shawshank Prison.
Mm-hmm.
And it's he kind of goes through the motions. He's talking, he's driving through Castle Rock. Gives us an opportunity to see the city as he drives through it. Then he goes up to a cliff and he kills himself in like one of the gnarliest ways ever. He ties a roof around his or a noose around his neck, drives his car off the cliff into Castle Lake, and the other end of the noose is tied to a tree. So it says that we're told he decapitates himself this way.
And they can't find his head.
Yeah, and his head's missing.
Well,
that's
yeah,
fucking wild.
I think it's the end of episode 2 where we see that the dog has buried his head in a yeah, which is just great. I just love it. It's hardcore, right? It's I mean, we were joking around before, and I was like, well, it's not a bad idea, because if the rope somehow doesn't kill you, like if the rope breaks or something super unexpected, then at least you're going to like crash into the lake and probably die when you crash. And if you don't die in the crash, then you'll just drown. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's a very assured way of killing yourself.
Yeah, the question is, and I think one of the big mystery questions is why, right? Like, like presumably it has to do with the thing he's done to the kid, the quote unquote kid. We don't have a name for him yet, so that's what we're gonna call him. And his responsibility in locking him up and keeping him there. But like, the interesting thing is we see that John Locke feels, you know, just in that like he's doing the work of God, that God came to him. It's God spoke to him. That's the voiceover in the second episode. God spoke to him, told him what to do, told him how to build the cage, told him to keep the kid down there, told him all this stuff. And so he feels vindication in all the stuff he's doing, but he's being forced to retire. He's being forced out. He knows he won't be able to access that room anymore. And so the choice is off yourself. It's, I don't know. What do you think? What?
I mean, yes. I mean, these are clearly the questions we're supposed to be asking. Is like he can no longer be the guardian, or whatever role he sees himself as. He seems to know that the kid in the cage is going to be retrieved, because he tells him to ask for our main character. And why he does that is actually a huge mystery, because it's like, are you like why on earth do that? If it almost makes you think that there's some like long complicated con here involving like maybe he is trying to protect the kid or something, and it's like, protect it from what? I don't know. Like that I think very intentionally we don't have all the pieces yet. Like that is part of, I won't call it mystery box storytelling, because I think that's overly narrow. It's just like mystery storytelling, where it's like you can't, if you lay all the clues out in front of the viewer in the first episode, they'll probably just figure it out. So I think there's a lot of stuff we just don't know yet, and and I just can't really guess. But definitely wondering, like, why did they call our main character? Why why did he kill himself instead of hanging around? Yeah, etc. Yeah, all kinds of questions here.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest I'll call it a clue, but I guess questions about this whole thing. It takes place in episode 2, where Henry starts looking around in John Locke's stuff and finds those one a day flip calendars.
Yeah.
And he's kept dozens of them, all with the same Bible verse, Acts 16:33, which says, even at that hour of the night, the jailer cared for them and washed their wounds. Then he and everyone in his household were immediately baptized. So I don't know if you know that story at all. This is
No.
Acts, I believe, takes place post crucifixion, resurrection, and departure of Jesus, and it's the disciples kind of preaching the gospel. And this particular one is, I think, Paul gets arrested for some nonsense, because I feel like Paul got arrested a lot. He gets arrested and is in jail, and like I think an earthquake happens and it opens all the cell doors, and everyone's like, "Oh, we can leave," and Paul's like, "No, we have to stay. This is right. We can't do this." And like he is able to convert the jailer and his family, and so this is kind of a story about how like the jailer was kind to them in repaying for their kindness, and then was glorified by God, kind of.
Okay.
So there, even at that hour of the night, the jailer cared for them and washed their wounds. And then he and everyone in his household are immediately baptized. So like he's the jailer in this idea. He's washing the wounds he's taking care of this kid, right? Like he's keeping him trapped because he thinks he's the devil, but he's also taking care of him. He's feeding him. He's like, we see him sit there and talk to him. How often does he talk to him? How long? Like that's one big question too, is over the 27 years he's been doing this, what is his relationship to this kid now?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, by the way, I think there are some clever little twists of wording and so forth that leave open some other possibilities. Like, they never directly say he's talking about this kid when he says that he's found the devil. And we do have another kid in the story who mysteriously disappears.
Sure.
And may have killed his father.
Yeah.
So it leaves some wiggle room for interpretation of what this kid in the cell is, and why he might feel this kind of duty toward the kid. I do feel like we're being left with enough vagueness that we can impose all sorts of crazy shapes onto things. But that was one little ambiguity that jumped out to me, where I was like, we've got 2 kids. That's not that doesn't feel like an accident.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that's totally fair. One of the weirdest things that jumped out to me about the Bible verse a day calendars, though, Matt, is it isn't like the one day that's been ripped out of the thing and kept. It's like he just stops flipping through the thing when he gets to that particular verse.
Yeah, and
that's crazy.
And so that all happened very quickly, and I couldn't figure out how to rewind in the Hulu app. But I was like, is it the same day, or is it just
not? They're all different days.
Okay, so it's just the same verse, but it happens to fall on different days.
So he's getting these calendars once a year, and he flips through it until he gets to that day, and then just puts it away. He doesn't keep you. Yeah, it's because like I don't know. I have those calendars. I have in the past gotten those, and it's not Bible verses for me. The one I have right now is a Philadelphia Eagles facts. And sometimes you get to one of those things where like you see a quote you like, or something that speaks to you, and instead of like ripping that one off and throwing it away, you rip that one off and save it. Like that's the normal thing to do, but that's not what he did here. He kept the whole thing and stopped flipping days after that.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that's interesting. I mean, it basically just, I don't know if it's like super, super important. I think it just kind of says like the only reason he's buying these in the first place is kind of to reassure himself that he is the jailer, that he is the jailer who washes the wounds, and he'll be baptized. And just, for thoroughness sake, like the association you're supposed to make is like by being baptized, you are saved.
Yeah.
You're welcomed into the covenant of Christ and so forth.
Which is ironic, Mr. John Locke, because killing yourself is not appreciated
Uh-huh.
in the covenant of Mr. Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
They don't like that up there, John.
it's true. I mean, also like is archaic, but I believe like being buried without your head is regarded as like, well, yeah, how is Jesus going to resurrect you if you don't have your head?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I mean, I certainly think that kind of imagery is intentional for sure.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
there's some sort of suspicion, or we're not meant to take things at face value, but which direction are they going to break in? We're really
Yeah.
not sure of that.
And Pangborn notes to Henry that the spot of his suicide is right next to the spot where Pangborn found him, and so
Yeah.
the show rather is kind of inviting us to maybe draw a line between these two things. Like, what does the disappearance of Henry Deaver have to do with this kid? If
Yeah.
anything, we don't know, but I think the show is kind of pushing us towards drawing lines between them for sure. I mean, just by having Henry come home because of the kid, it's doing that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, I love that opening sequence so much. We talked about Molly Strand a little bit, but I want to touch on her more, Matt, because she's I think, out of this big thing of mysteries, it's like, what is her role in the story? I think is almost one of the biggest mysteries. Like, she's, as you said, she's obsessed with Henry Deaver, writing his name in her notebook over and over and over again. She has these empathy powers. She wants to bring Castle Rock back from the dead. She also, it seems to be the only one that doesn't hate Henry.
Right. Yeah.
But yet, like, is terrified of hasn't like rushed out to see him. Like, when she sees him, she hides. Right.
Yeah. It's super unclear whether, was she always just kind of watching him from afar? Have they ever even had a conversation before?
Yeah, we don't know.
Like it's interesting because based on the show, it's like, well, they could have had like a relationship when they were teens, and we just don't see that. And they were like, in love, or it could literally just be that she sort of was obsessed with him from afar. We see these little tiny moments where like they would communicate by like shining a light at each other through their windows, but that could have been the limit of their communication, right?
Yeah, it might have been. Yeah.
We just don't know, and it could be revealed like, oh no, they have. We don't know. We don't know yet. That's. I mean, I think she's. I actually, I'm excited because I like that actress. I kind of like the idea of what we're doing there. It's interesting, but I don't know what we're doing with that yet. Like one of the most immediately compelling characters to me is the prison guard I mentioned earlier, where like he's. I don't know if I want to say like a Stephen King archetype, because I can't think of another story where this exact thing happens, but it's like prison guard, but he actually has a good heart.
Sure.
Unlike everyone else around him. And he's got, a pregnant wife, and he's actually taking all these career risks to do the right thing, like repeatedly over and over.
Yeah,
and,
he is the one that anonymously calls Henry Deaver to notify him, because he sees that the prison is going to try to sweep this whole thing with the kid under the rug and hide it, and he acts upon that. Yeah.
I thought one of the most like authentic, sort of natural bits of acting in the whole show was when the main character has him in the car, and he's like, "Don't worry, I'll get you, whistleblower status," or he says something like that, and the prison guard just like flips out and is like, "You're not gonna like I'm not part of this at all. You're not gonna bring me into this. I called you. I did the right thing. I have no more part of this. You have everything you need. Don't involve me. I have a pregnant wife." And he was, and it was just like, yeah, that's like exactly how I would react in that situation. And like not in a good way. Just like that was a very convincing portrayal of just that whole situation. I thought that was great.
I agree. I mean, Shawshank Prison has never been a well-run moral institute, right? Every time we were in Shawshank in a King story, it's not because it's a great place that is truly believing in the rehabilitation of criminals. Clearly not in this case. I do like that we have, perhaps this guard whose name is Dennis would have gotten along very well with the former warden, right? Because everyone felt like John Locke's character like truly believed in, or that's what his wife says in the second episode, right? That he truly believed in rehabilitation. He truly believed in what he was doing. He believed in these things. And I guess the question there is whether that was really him or that was just a screen, a mask to hide what he was doing with the kid. We don't know, but you feel like Dennis would have gotten along really well with this guy, which maybe serves to explain why he's like hovering around when the new warden first comes, because he has a relationship with the old warden and he's kind of bummed about this whole situation.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it didn't occur to me actually, but makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but I guess what is your, so in these two episodes, you know, in the very end, our cliffhanger moment at the end of the first episode is Dennis, you know, on duty. He is kind of watching the screens. The kid disappears, and then, as you said, we get a bunch of flashes of dead guards. He goes rushing out, hits the alarm, goes rushing out to find what's going on. We realize that this was all a hallucination or something, but in that moment, he almost accidentally shoots one of his fellow guards. So it seems like we're pushing this guy towards a place where you get worried about him a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it's almost like our you know, the kid is trying to get rid of him, perhaps. Like, or because it's like, if you think it through logically, well, okay, you can see the kid as almost just like a, you know, chaos being that's just trying to scare the shit out of him because it's amusing, right? And that's totally one explanation. But if you think about it as having any kind of rationale behind it, then it's like, oh, he's trying to like get this guy in a huge amount of trouble and get rid of him for some reason. You know, maybe get him fired or something.
Sure.
I don't know. Like maybe literally to repay him for his kindness. Like, hey, you know, you help me take a shower. I'm going to get you fired and far away from this horrible place. I don't know. I don't know. I again, this is you're witnessing me like really grasping because the show has just not given us much to go on.
No, it hasn't. Yeah, I mean, I think part of that is the kid is such an enigma, at least in these first two episodes, that like we can't even attach motivation to him because like, yeah, he killed that Nazi. We're like, nah, no real loss there.
Yeah.
But we're told over and over again that he's the devil, but he's completely silent. He's played by Bill Skarsgård, which means he's creepy.
Yeah.
Just very, very, very creepy, very effective. Skarsgård is. He's channeling his inner Pennywise here, without any of the makeup, but all the presence and unnerving nature of it, without having to say a word, because the only word he says is Henry Deaver.
Right. And then later he says, "You don't want to touch me," to the Nazi, which is interesting because, like, okay, look, I think I'm kind of talking myself into a certain perspective here, which is like, okay, you hire Skarsgård knowing that everyone knows he's Pennywise, knowing that the assumption is going to be, oh, okay, this guy's Satan, and it's like, well, that's just so we can twist it on you. And if you take it literally, that he says to the not like if you're viewing him as a dark creature, and he says to this Nazi, "You don't want to touch me," it's like threatening. But if he's literally just like, "You don't want to touch me," like I'm warning you, and then the guy does, and then he dies, and it's like, well, he warned you. I mean, can't blame him. So there's I think more than ambiguity. I think there's actually reason to think that like we're being actively misled that this is an evil creature, and it's not actually an evil creature. It's actually something else, something unexpected.
So just so we're on the same page, the warden, like gopher, put the kid in that cell with the Nazi for him to die, right? Like they were hoping the Nazi would kill the kid and solve their problem, right?
Yeah, I believe they were basically like, get rid of him. Like we want to get rid of this problem.
Yeah.
And the hope was that he would if not necessarily die, then at least just like, we're going to keep him in solitary. That's what we're going to do with him. You know, that's
yeah.
I think you're right though. Yeah.
Cause I mean, that's a good point, because I don't know, maybe I live in a world in which a corpse is still a problem that you have to do something
Uh-huh.
with. Like, I don't know how that necessarily solves their problem if they have this unexplained corpse that is in there. Like, I don't know. Maybe they'll just
I,
cremate it, I guess.
genuinely not sure because because I remember when they go to the cell, it's supposed to be a solitary cell, and then there's like the guy's already in there, and then he's like, "Oh, guess you're double booked."
Yeah.
Um, and his reaction may very well be genuine surprise, like, "Oh, there's somebody already in the solitary cell." So maybe they actually did just intend to put him in solitary and just leave him in solitary like forever.
Nah, I think they were trying to kill him, and only because I think the warden and this guy have a brief conversation about that earlier in perhaps the first episode, I think. So
yeah,
I think that's what they were trying to do, because I mean this results in the warden having that great scene that I loved with Pangborn, right, where he shows up at the bar, and like I love those scenes where like someone walks up to someone and they are there to specifically talk to them, but they have to like work their way into it first. Like they can't just say, so like the warden's about to leave because the strange guy's talking to him and he's like, "Yep, I knew your predecessor, the old warden." And then she's like suddenly locked in and paying attention. I love the setup of those scenes. They really work well on me.
Right.
This is a really good one.
I thought this was, I totally agree. It was a great example because he almost seems like he's like a drunk who's just losing it, and she's just like, "Oh my god," like she's clearly just like, "Oh Jesus," and like backing away, and then he like suddenly starts seeming sharper and then says, "You know, your predecessor said," and then she's like, "Oh shit, this is, I misunderstood the situation." And like what I loved about the whole thing, for me, like it really worked on me so well because I was expecting anything but him to say, "Leave the kid in the fucking cage." I was like, what? Like, so not only does he know about the kid, but he thinks the kid should stay in the cage. And you're just like, oh my God, this is absolutely not where I thought we were going with Alan Pangborn, who again, I see as a hero, because of the, one other book I've read, obviously.
But I mean, the implication there is that we see the note that he burns from John Locke a little bit later, and the implication is that he's just buying into this, right? That he sees this note and he believes him. He believes he's right, and I think it is fair to make that assumption of Alan Pangborn, that he could be the hero, but he's seen some shit, man. He's seen some shit in this town over his days. He knows that this stuff is real and it exists, and if someone is telling you, I don't know, like you live in a Stephen King town long enough, and if someone tells you God told me to keep this guy in a cell, you're probably just gonna be like, all right.
You had to chase one devil out of the town already, so sure.
So I mean, I think it is really interesting because we've kind of set up Pangborn, for those that maybe don't know him or don't recognize him, as an antagonist. He's specifically antagonist to Henry, right? He is with Henry's mother, and there's conflict there between the two of them. He is seemingly taking care of Ruth in a way that her son is not, so that's good. But yeah, I mean the scene, I loved the scene where he's digging up the dog, because it's so uncomfortable that he's actually doing this as a kindness for Ruth, that like she thinks that the dog is not dead and messing with stuff, and so he's gonna dig up the dog to prove it, take a picture of it and show it to her, and have that picture to be like, no, the dog's dead, look here. But it just comes off as so creepy.
Well, I really love that, because I was thinking like, man, if I was ever in a similar situation, I would just be like, okay, I'll go check the dog's still buried, and then I would, walk out of the room and then come back in and be like, yep, still buried.
It's like when retail workers go check in the back to see if they have anything more in stock.
Exactly. But he actually does it. And like, I feel like it's not just like, oh, well, he's just like a stand-up guy. It's like, no, this is a man who maybe just wants to check that the dog is actually still dead.
Like he is going to comfort her, but in the back of his mind, he's also like, let's just make sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think this is one thing that's really exciting, because I think with the Ruth and especially the Pangborn characters, we have a real opportunity to tell, like, this is what living in Castle Rock this long does to you. I mean, we kind of already see it with John Locke, right? Like, this is what it does to you. Either you kill yourself, or you go a little crazy
Yeah.
because this place is so bad. It's so evil.
Yeah.
So wrong.
Yeah. I mean, like practically nobody in the town kind of seems to have their head on right. Like the closest thing to just like a straightforwardly heroic character who hasn't done anything super questionable yet is the prison guard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and he's young, right? He
Yeah.
presumably hasn't lived. Actually, we have no idea if he grew up here or not, but I wouldn't be surprised if we learn later that he didn't grow up in Castle Rock.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
It occurs to me that like we're gonna have to re-listen to these episodes every time we do another one. Because I mean, we originally talked about doing this just one episode at a time, right? But then we were like, we can't watch one episode of a show with a month in between.
Yeah.
It'll take forever, and also we'll just forget everything. So the compromise was 2 episodes. But yeah, we're not going to be watching these next 2 episodes for another couple weeks. So just re-listen to this episode, and we'll be fine.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I wouldn't be surprised if I didn't watch these episodes soon and then like rewatch them again, because I am actually enjoying the show that much.
Yeah. I might do that. This is, I'm really loving the show more than I did the first time I watched it. By the way, I don't know if I said that at the beginning, but I am, and I think, to be honest with you, like my memory of it is, this is a show I enjoyed a lot, didn't love, and then there's an episode in this season that was like one of my all-time favorite episodes of TV in the year it came out. We haven't gotten there yet. I will tell you when we get there.
Okay.
So that's my memory of season 1 of the show, at least. So the fact that I am enjoying this so much more, having to like sit there and pay attention to it and not be on my phone every so often, I'm loving it. It's great.
Yeah. Maybe don't tell me in advance, because I find that expectations can really skew things for you.
I will not.
Tell me after I've watched it.
Here's the other problem with that. I don't remember which episode it is. So
Fair enough.
I will remember it as soon as I start watching it, but I could not tell you whether it's episode 3 or 6 or 10. I have no idea.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Anything else you wanted to say about the first 2 episodes of Castle Rock? We meant to do episode at a time, and then we just kind of talked about everything, which is fine.
Yeah, it's hard to keep it separate. It's such this windy sort of ball of yarn of storytelling that we went all over the place. But I don't know how else you talk about something like this, where like it's intentionally written that way. It's intentionally written where you're like, wait, okay, so this plot element pops up briefly in this character's story, but then also over here in this character's story. And in order to talk about that, you have to, so it just sprawls and twists and winds, and it's very hard to like keep on one sort of note for more than a few minutes, because you're pulled away by the nature of the storytelling. It's a very good, it's very hard to do this kind of storytelling well. I feel like I've seen a lot of examples of people who sort of try to do mystery, I think thriller is another word for it, where it's like it's not really horror. Like, I mean, there've been a couple scary moments in the story so far, but more like sort of thriller / mystery genre. And like, man, there's some bad thrillers out there that are just horribly paced and just like don't know how to really dole out the clues at a good rate, and don't know how to be properly subtle and clever with the clues. And this show really does know how to do all those things. So
yeah, no, I like that. You sent me a message very early on in the show, like, wait a minute, is this a spooky?
Yeah.
And that was really only because of the first 5 minutes, right, which are kind of legitimately scary.
It was, I would say the scary parts so far have been the first 5 minutes and the descent into the, I guess it was a water tank, a cistern, where the cage is, and the guy drops his, I don't actually even know what he drops. I guess it's like his badge into the cistern, and you're like, oh shit, because it's like dark and scary, and then we get like the flash of the eyes before you really know what's going on. Right, you have no idea what's going to be in that cistern as a first time viewer. So it really creeped me out quite a lot, actually.
Yeah, I said the first 5 minutes. That's what I meant at that part,
okay.
Which is not quite the first 5 minutes, but it is early in the story.
Yeah. I guess the other part was when he kills himself with the car, but that's not so much scary.
That's not scary in that kind of way. Yeah,
it's horror in the sense of like gross out horror. Like it's
Yeah.
we see the spray of blood across the dashboard and so forth, but it's not scary. Yeah.
And I totally agree with you that it's very difficult to do a show like this and pull it off. And we'll see, by the end of the season if this was successful or not. But there are plenty of shows ever since Lost that have tried to do this kind of formula and just completely fucked it up.
Yeah.
There's actually a show that's on, what's not on right now, but it has 2 seasons out called From. I think I've talked to you about it briefly in the past, but
yeah,
it's trying to do a similar thing. To where there's this great mystery. I think the concept of the show is basically like these people are just driving in their RV and then like suddenly end up in this town and they can't leave. And it turns out that's what happens to everyone. They'll just driving along roads and they'll suddenly be in this town. And if you try to leave by the road, you just come back to where you were. And also at night, like these vampire zombie things come out and eat you if you're not inside. And it's a good show, and I really enjoyed the first few episodes, very similar to how I've enjoyed these first few episodes. And then it's just doing the thing where like you got to start telling me what's going on, folks. Like you have to eventually start telling me what the fuck is going on here. I can't, my attention can't be held this long, and I don't find the characters as like captivating as characters in Lost, for example, to where that held the mystery for a long time. But I was just so into the characters that I didn't care. So yeah, all that being said, this is a difficult thing to pull off, and yeah, great first 2 episodes of it, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's really, really fun. I mean, I guess if you've listened to all of our spoiler talk so far, it's only, we've only spoiled the first 2 episodes for you. I can't say I recommend the show because it might totally go into the ditch, but I definitely recommend the first 2 episodes. Really enjoyed them quite a lot.
Yeah, me too. And I'm excited to get into the next 2, which we will do in a month.
Yep.
I'm going to do exactly what you're going to do, which is I'm probably going to watch them here pretty quickly and then watch them again closer to recording date.
Sounds good.
So it's going to be fun. I can't wait. Matt, this was such a great time. We got 18 episodes to go. So it's going to be a good one.
Hell yeah.
All right, but that is going to do it for us this month, folks. Thank you for coming along this ride. We want to hear from you, though. If you are watching along with the show for the first time, let us know in the comments, or you can send us an email. We just want to hear from folks. What do you think of Castle Rock? This is one of those things that I really wasn't plugged in with the Stephen King community on, Matt. So, like, I don't know kind of the overall sentiment of the show. Like, do people love it? Do people hate it? I don't know. And so I'm curious, out of our listeners, what do you folks think of Castle Rock? Obviously, please no spoilers for future stuff, but we want to hear from you.
Yeah. All right.
And thank you so much for supporting us. You're listening to this on Patreon, which means you're supporting us on Patreon. And all we can say to that is thank you so much. We're forever grateful. I hope you're enjoying this content. I hope it feels like you're getting your money's worth with this thing.
Yeah, we went to every level of the tower that there was, and now we got off on like some weird floor where now it's like a parking structure for the tower, I guess. And there's different levels of the parking structure. Yeah, I'm doing a metaphor here where it's
not really working.
It's like related to Stephen King's tower, but it's like next to it because it's not okay. You know what I'm trying to say. I gotcha. What if the Dark Tower had just like a parking garage next to it?
I mean, the Crimson King does have to park somewhere, so yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
How did he get there?
Did Roland walk all the way around it? I don't think so. I think he approached it from one angle. He didn't see what was exactly behind the tower.
You're right. You're right. Everything would have gone very differently if he'd gotten to the parking garage first.
Okay, I think that's a good place to stop it. Thanks, folks. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next month. Long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.